The ice wolves were already waiting when Frostmere brought Avelyn Rook to the gate. That was what frightened the court into silence. Not her torn white dress, not her bare feet bleeding into the snow, not the funeral thread tied loosely around her wrists, with 3 little silver bells meant to warn the palace whenever the death-scented girl moved too close to the living. The wolves. They stood beyond the black iron gate in the storm-dark forest, 12 pale shapes between the frozen pines, too still to be hungry and too silent to be beasts. Ice crusted their shoulders, moonlight clung to their fur. Their eyes did not search the crowd. They watched Avelyn. High Frost Cirrus Merel raised the frostglass lantern before the winter court. Inside it burned a lock of Avelyn's hair, a drop of her blood, and 1 petal from the white rose placed on dead queens. The smoke should have turned silver if her scent was harmless. It turned black. A relieved murmur passed through the nobles. Relief, Avelyn had learned, was often uglier than hatred. Hatred had heat. Relief meant they had wanted the verdict. Death, scented, Morel declared. The 3 bells at Avelyn's wrists trembled. She did not. For 10 years, Frostmere had taught her what that word meant. A dead calf in winter pasture, a fever in the nursery wing, a soldier who collapsed after passing her in the corridor, a candle that guttered when she cleaned the chapel. Every ordinary sorrow had been given her name until even servants stepped away from her shadow. She had stopped denying it because denial gave fear a place to bite. But tonight, she lifted her head. "If my scent calls death," she said, voice thin from cold but steady, "why do you need a lantern to prove it?" The court stirred. Morel's eyes sharpened. That small question did what pleading never could. It disturbed the ceremony. At the top of the palace steps, Alpha King Theron Voss turned his gaze fully on her. Avelyn had never stood this close to him before. She had seen him from below balconies, across training yards, once at the old moon chapel with blood on his hand and fury locked behind his teeth. He was a hard man to look at for long. Black hair, wind-tossed, frost, dark armor, a narrow iron circlet at his brow, pale gold eyes that made lesser wolves lower theirs before they remembered why. Behind him stretched his wolf shadow, huge, dark, wrong. It should have been sharp, clean, royal. Instead, its edges blurred into the palace wall, as if something ancient had rubbed away its ability to recognize its own shape. Morel noticed where Avelyn looked. So did Theron. His expression did not change, but his wolf shadow lifted its head. Only slightly. Lady Selene stepped from the line of nobles beside Morel, beautiful in blue velvet and white fur, her silver blonde hair braided with frost pearls. The court loved her scent. Winter lilies. Clean snow. Safe blood. Every time she passed, nobles breathed deeper, as if praising her without words. She looked at Avelyn with polished sorrow. "She questions the right because fear makes cursed blood clever," Selene said softly. "I begged the seeress to test her privately, but when the lambs died in the lower pens this morning, the law could no longer be delayed." Avelyn looked at her. The lambs. She had found them before dawn, stiff in the hay, each with frost around its mouth. She had also found a blue velvet thread caught on the latch. Gelinis thread. Avelyn almost spoke it. Then the black smoke inside the lantern twisted toward her lips. A warning. Theron's eyes cut to the lantern. "What did the smoke do?" he asked. Morel answered too quickly. "It reacts when the cursed attempts denial." I asked what it did. The winter court went still. Morel lowered the lantern by a finger's width. "It prevents the death scent from spreading through false speech." Avelyn laughed once. Small, bitter. Every noble heard it because no one expected a condemned woman to laugh. "So my curse is dangerous when I breathe," she said, "and dangerous when I explain?" Theron looked at her then, really looked, and something in the cold space between them changed. Not mercy, not trust, something more dangerous. "Attention." Morel stepped closer to the king. "Majesty, the northern packs already question Frostmere's strength. If the old law fails tonight, they will say the Alpha King shelters death beneath his roof." Theron's jaw tightened. There was the leash. Not around his throat, around his throne. Avelyn saw him feel it. She hated that she understood the shape of it. Theron descended one step. "What does the law require?" Morel's mouth softened with victory. She must pass beyond the gate before moonset. If the ice wolves devour her, the curse is confirmed and removed. If they refuse her, she may return at dawn. The court knew the cruelty hidden in that word. Refuse. Ice wolves did not refuse meat. Theron looked toward the forest, then back at Avelyn. Unbind her wrists. Merel's face flickered. Majesty, if this is judgment, not execution, she walks unbound. A guard cut the funeral thread. The bells fell into the snow. None of them rang. Avelyn stared at them. So did the wolves. The largest ice wolf beyond the gate took one step forward. The iron bars frosted white. A noblewoman whimpered. Morel lifted the lantern again, but the black smoke inside it faltered, thinning for one impossible breath. Beneath the death stench, another scent slipped free. Pine, smoke after snowfall, warm milk by a winter hearth. Moonlight on a sleeping wolf's fur. Theron inhaled. His wolf shadow struck the palace wall so hard frost cracked along the stone. Merel slammed her palm over the lantern top. The scent vanished. Avelyn's knees weakened from the sudden emptiness it left behind. Theron's voice came low. "What was that?" "No," Merle whispered. The word was too honest. Then she recovered. "A mimic scent. The curse is older than we feared." Avelyn looked at the wolves waiting beyond the gate. For the first time, they seemed less like a sentence and more like witnesses who had arrived early. She stepped toward the gate before anyone pushed her. Theron moved as if to stop her. He stopped himself. That restraint hurt worse than condemnation, because it meant he knew something was wrong and still did not yet know how to break the law without breaking the kingdom under it. Avelyn paused beside him, close enough to see snow melting on his lashes, close enough to hear the rough edge in his breath. "What is your name?" he asked. She held his gaze. "Avelyn Rook." His wolf shadow shuddered. Avelyn saw Merel's hand tighten around the lantern until blood marked the frostglass. Then the gate opened. Cold rolled in like a living thing. Avelyn walked through barefoot, each step staining the snow red. Behind her, the iron gate closed with the sound of a verdict being locked. The largest ice wolf emerged from the pines. Avelyn stopped before it. The court waited for her scream. The beast lowered its head to her throat and inhaled. The death curse burned black beneath her skin. Then the wolf whimpered. Not with hunger, with grief. It folded its enormous body into the snow before her. One by one, the other ice wolves bowed. Behind the gate, every torch went out. And in the dark, Avelyn heard the Alpha King whisper her name as if his wolf had remembered it before he did. Morel did not order the gate opened. She lifted the frostglass lantern. The moment the ice wolves bowed, the black smoke inside the lantern twisted violently, pressing against the glass as if something trapped within it had heard its name spoken in the snow. Avelyn stood beyond the gate, surrounded by enormous white wolves, with blood freezing around her bare feet and the death curse crawling under her skin. Yet the wolves were not looking only at her. They were looking at the lantern. Theron saw it. His hand tightened on the iron bar. Cirrus. Morel's face had already recovered. The horror that had escaped her mouth was gone, buried beneath holy severity. "Do not mistake the behavior of beasts for judgment, Majesty. The beasts were sent to judge her, and death has many servants." Morel turned toward the court, raising her voice. "Ice wolves live nearest the winter graves. They know burial scent better than any creature in Frostmere. If they bow, it is not reverence. Death recognizes death." The nobles seized the words quickly. Avelyn heard the shift from beyond the gate. First, Luna became grave thing. Wonder became warning. The largest ice wolf lifted its head and snarled toward the lantern. Not the palace. Not the court. The lantern. Inside the frostglass, the black smoke thinned for one breath, and beneath it Avelyn smelled herself. Not the scent they had named death. Something softer. Pine smoke. Warm fur. Milk in a wooden cup. A hearth before snowfall. Then the smoke darkened and swallowed it. Avelyn pressed one hand to her throat. "That scent is mine." No one moved. The words were not loud, but the snow carried them cleanly through the bars. Celine stepped beside Morel, her pale blue gown untouched by the storm. Frost pearls shone in her braided hair, each one small and perfect, like frozen tears no one had earned. "Poor Avelyn," she said. "Even now she clings to any sweetness the curse imitates." Avelyn looked at her. The lambs died behind a locked pen. You were there before dawn. A ripple passed through the court. Celine's sorrow did not falter. I went to pray over them. With blue velvet thread caught on the latch. For the first time, Celine's eyes changed. Only slightly. A needle flashed beneath snow. Merelle slemmel her pelm over the lantern top. The death curse tightened around Avelyn's neck. Black frost climbed from her collarbone to her jaw. Pain tore the breath from her. The ice wolves pressed closer, growling low, but none touched her throat. They seemed afraid of breaking whatever had been hidden under the curse. Theron turned from Avelyn to the lantern. Open it. Morel's fingers whitened around the handle. Majesty, this vessel contains the proof of her danger. It contains her hair and blood. It contains what her blood releases. Then open it. Celine moved before Merrill could answer. She drew one frost pearl from her braid and crushed it between her fingers. White dust scattered through the air, slipping through the gate like powdered moonlight. The moment it touched Avelyn, the soft scent vanished completely. The ice wolves recoiled. Avelyn fell to one knee. Celine's voice lowered into something almost tender. See? A clean scent cannot survive near her. Avelyn could not breathe. The black frost closed around her throat like a hand. She heard the court murmuring, heard Merelle blessing the old law, heard Theron's voice cut through both but not close enough to reach her. Then the largest ice wolf stepped between her and the gate. Its body blocked the court's view. Behind the shelter of its white shoulder, it pressed its cold nose to the frost at Avelyn's throat and inhaled once, deeply. The black veins shuddered. The wolf's eyes flashed silver blue. It had not bowed to death. It was trying to smell past it. The wolf turned its head toward the forest and gave one sharp sound. Not a howl. Accommon. The other ice wolves moved. Two flanked Avelyn. One lowered its body beside her. Another used its muzzle to lift her arm with careful strength. When she failed to stand, they did not drag her. They arranged themselves beneath her like living snowdrifts until her weight rested across their backs. Behind the gate, Celine whispered, "If they carry her, the curse is spreading." Theron's wolf shadow struck the palace wall again, harder this time. The blurred edges sharpened into claws. "Enough," Theron said. He reached for the gate latch. Morel placed the lantern between his hand and the iron. Black smoke inside it flared toward him. Theron stopped. Not from fear, from recognition of a threat he did not yet understand. Morel spoke softly, for him alone, though Avelyn still heard pieces through the snow. "If you cross before dawn, every northern alpha will say you broke winter law for a death-scented woman. They will challenge your throne before the next moon." Theron's jaw worked once. Avelyn saw the trap close around him. She had wanted him to open the gate. She hated herself for wanting it. The largest wolf began carrying her toward the forest. Avelyn turned her head against its frozen fur and looked back once. Theron stood behind the bars, one hand hovering near the latch, his face carved from restraint and fury. His wolf shadow pressed against the wall behind him, as if it would tear free without him. Avelyn used the last of her breath. "Do not let her burn it." Theron heard. So did Merelle. The seeress lowered the lantern slightly, and for one moment, the black smoke inside thinned again. A pale shape appeared within the glass, not smoke, not hair, not ash. A woman's handprint, pressed from the inside. Then Morel turned the lantern away. The forest swallowed Avelyn before the court could see more. The ice wolves carried her deep beyond the death line, farther than any condemned soul was meant to go. Snow fell harder between the trees. The world narrowed to fur, breath, and pain. Avelyn drifted in and out of awareness, sometimes hearing the wolves pause over ice, sometimes hearing a woman humming from inside the memory of smoke. At last, they reached a hollow where the snow did not fall. Black pines circled a frozen pool. At its center stood a stone cradle filled with old ice, and above it hung dozens of dead lanterns, all made of frostglass, all dark. The largest wolf lowered Avelyn before the cradle. Its nose touched the ice. The dead lanterns began to glow, one by one. Inside each lantern appeared a faint handprint, women's hands. Avelyn stared, trembling. The black frost on her throat cracked again. From the nearest lantern came a scent so warm it hurt. The same scent the frostglass had stolen from her. Pine smoke, milk, moonlit fur, home. Then a woman's voice whispered from inside the ice cradle. "Little winter blood, who taught them to call you death?" Avelyn reached toward the voice. Before her fingers touched the cradle, the frost split open. Inside lay a silver wolf mask and a strip of torn white fur marked with the royal bloodline sigil of House Voss. The curse under Avelyn's skin screamed, and every ice wolf around her lowered its head toward the hidden relic of the first Luna. The silver wolf mask opened its eyes. Avelyn nearly fell backward into the snow. The mask lay inside the cracked ice cradle, half buried beneath the strip of torn white fur marked with the royal sigil of House Voss. It should have been only carved silver, old and cold, shaped to fit a woman's face. Instead, two pale lights burned behind its empty sockets, not bright enough to blind, but old enough to make every ice wolf lower its body closer to the ground. Avelyn touched her throat. The black frost there had split into thin lines. Through those cracks, warmth leaked out in fragile breaths. Pine smoke, milk, moonlit fur, home. Then the frost tried to seal again. One of the dead lanterns above the hollow flared. Inside it, a woman's handprint pressed harder against the glass. A voice came from the ice cradle, softer than snowfall and sharper than memory. "They took your scent before you were old enough to name it." Avelyn's breath caught. "Who are you?" The largest ice wolf stepped behind her, not touching, but close enough to steady the air. The silver mask tilted inside the cradle. "I was the first woman Frostmere called Luna before the throne learned to fear what wolves remember." Avelyn stared at the torn white fur, the royal sigil, the dead lanterns full of trapped handprints. "First Luna." The wolves did not move. The voice did not answer like a title pleased to be spoken. It answered like a wound reopened. "They broke my name into scent and law. They kept the law. They burned the scent." Avelyn looked up at the lanterns. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds beyond the trees, hidden in the dark branches like frozen fruit. Those are women. Women who smelled of home before war, needed them to smell like graves. The words slid under Avelyn's skin. All her life, the court had treated scent as proof. Clean snow, winter lilies, grave frost, death. They breathed and judged before anyone spoke. They built futures around what their wolves recognized and what their priests declared. But if scent could be stolen, what else had Frostmere mistaken for truth? The black frost at her throat tightened. The mask's lights dimmed. Avelyn understood suddenly. The curse was listening. Not dead. Guarded. Something had been placed in her bloodline to strangle the scent whenever it surfaced. Avelyn forced herself onto her knees before the ice cradle. "Why me?" A thin crack crossed the silver mask. "Because your mother hid the last warm breath in a rook child." Avelyn's heart lurched. "My mother died fevered. She died unscented." The hollow grew colder. The largest ice wolf gave a low warning growl, not at the cradle, but toward the palace far beyond the forest. Avelyn turned. Through the trees, Frostmere glowed faintly against the dawn-dark sky. Inside the palace, the lantern still burned. And each time Merel fed it, the frost on Avelyn's throat tightened. Back at the gate, Theron had not returned to the throne. He stood in the snow with the frostglass lantern in Merel's hands between them, while the court whispered behind him like a field of dry reeds. The ice wolves had carried Avelyn beyond the death line, but the scent that had escaped her remained caught in his lungs. He knew death. He had smelled battlefields frozen red, plague carts under winter cloth, old kings left too long in sealed chambers. Avelyn Rook had not smelled like that. For one breath, she had smelled like the thing his wolf had been trying to remember for years. His shadow scraped against the palace wall. "Give me the lantern," Theron said. Morel's expression did not shift. "The rite is incomplete. The woman is gone. The curse remains tied to the vessel until dawn. Then I will hold it." A whisper moved through the court. A king touching a death-sent vessel was no small thing. Merel let the fear swell for a moment before answering. "If the vessel blackens under your hand, every rival alpha will say Frostmere's king has invited grave sent into his blood." Theron stepped closer. The smoke in the lantern pressed toward him. Not like poison, like a captive recognizing a door. Celine moved then, quiet and graceful. She slipped one frost pearl from her braid and dropped it into the lantern's flame. The black smoke convulsed. Theron heard a muffled cry, a woman's cry. His hand closed around Celine's wrist before she could step back. The court gasped. Celine went still, eyes wide with perfectly measured innocence. Majesty? What did you put into it? A pearl blessed by the old moon temple, she said, to steady the curse. The lantern knocked once against Merel's grip. From inside the frostglass, a pale handprint appeared, then vanished. Theron's wolf shadow lunged across the wall. Merel's face sharpened. Control your wolf, Majesty. Theron did not release Celine's wrist. Why does her curse sound like a woman trapped in glass? Celine's eyes flicked to Merelle. Small, fatal, Theron saw. So did half the court. Morel lifted the lantern high, because death wears the voices of what it has eaten. A clever answer. So clever. Theron released Celine slowly. If Avelyn returns at dawn, she will speak before the court. Morel's mouth tightened. If she returns at dawn, Majesty, it may not be as herself. The warning traveled through the nobles at once. Theron looked toward the forest. He did not like fear. He disliked, managed fear more. In the ice hollow, Avelyn reached toward the silver mask. The largest wolf stepped in front of her hand. She stopped. The first Luna's voice whispered, "Not yet." Avelyn's fingers curled in the cold. "Then what do I do?" Above her, the dead lanterns began to swing, though no wind touched them. The handprints inside turned outward, all facing the palace. "Bring back what they used to bury you," said the first Luna. "Not the mask, not yet, the stolen scent." The ice cradle cracked wider. Beneath the mask lay a small frostglass shard shaped like a tear. Inside it moved a single thread of black smoke wrapped around gold light. Avelyn knew it without being told. Her true scent. Burned, hidden, and fed back to the court as death. She picked up the shard. Pain shot through her throat. Black frost raced across her jaw, then down her chest. The wolves growled and pressed close. Avelyn refused to drop it. For once, the pain was proof she was touching something that belonged to her. The first Luna's voice lowered. "When dawn opens the gate, they will expect bones. Give them the scent they stole." The hollow trembled. Far away, the palace bell began to ring morning. The ice wolves gathered beneath Avelyn again, but this time she did not lie senseless across their backs. She sat upright, shaking, one hand buried in the largest wolf's fur, the stolen scent shard clenched against her heart. As they turned toward Frostmere, the black frost around her throat split into the shape of a crescent crown. And inside the palace lantern, Morel saw the same mark appear in smoke. For the first time, the high frost seeress looked afraid. The morning bell rang once. The palace gate opened for bones. Instead, the ice wolves came through the snow carrying Avelyn Rook. The court had gathered again in the gray hour before sunrise, wrapped in furs and expectation, ready to witness what remained of a death-scented woman after the old law finished eating. Some nobles held scented cloths beneath their noses. Others had brought little silver charms to keep grave frost from clinging to their sleeves. No one had prepared for silence. The wolves crossed the death line without a sound, 12 storm-white bodies moving as one. Avelyn sat upright across the backs of the three largest, one hand buried in frost-covered fur, the other pressed to her chest around the frostglass shard she had taken from the hidden hollow. Her torn dress was stiff with ice. Her feet bled against the wolves' white backs. Around her throat, the black frost had cracked into the shape of a crescent crown. Alpha King Theron was already in the snow when they reached the gate. He had not gone inside after the night's judgment. Frost clung to his armor and dark hair. His wolf shadow stretched behind him across the palace wall, restless and blurred, but larger than it had been before dawn. The wolves stopped before him. Avelyn tried to climb down. Her strength failed. The largest wolf lowered itself, and the others followed, easing her from their backs as if setting down something breakable and sacred. She collapsed into the snow at Theron's feet, not like a corpse offered to a king, but like a survivor brought before the only man with enough power to answer what had been done. Theron dropped to one knee. The court drew in a single, sharp breath. Morel's face tightened. "Majesty." Theron ignored her. He did not touch Avelyn. He placed one hand in the snow beside her instead, close enough that she could see the burn marks on his knuckles from gripping the frozen gate all night. "You returned," he said. Avelyn's lips were cracked from cold. They carried me. His gaze moved to the wolves. Why? The largest ice wolf exhaled over Avelyn's shoulder. The scent escaped again, only for a breath. Pine smoke, warm milk, moonlit fur, home before war. Theron went utterly still. His wolf shadow stopped blurring. Every wolf-blooded person in the courtyard felt it. Shoulders stiffened, eyes widened. A few older guards bowed their heads before they understood why. Lady Selin moved fast. She crushed 3 frost pearls in her palm and scattered the dust toward Avelyn. Cover your mouths. Death wears comfort before it kills. The pearl dust struck Avelyn's throat. Black frost snapped, closed over the crescent mark. Avelyn cried out, curling around the shard in her hand. The ice wolves snarled. Theron rose so quickly the snow around him stirred. Do that again and I will take the next pearl from your throat. Jelene froze. The court froze with her. That was the first time the Alpha King had threatened the woman they expected him to make Luna. Morel stepped between them with the frostglass lantern lifted high. Its black smoke churned violently, reaching toward Avelyn like a hand made of ash. She brought back a fragment of the curse, Morel declared. The wolves have carried contamination into the court. Avelyn forced herself to look up. No. Her voice was weak, but the shard in her hand warmed. Marilee's eyes dropped to it. For the first time, she saw what Avelyn held. Fear broke through her holy mask. Give me that. Theron turned toward Morel. What is it? A death vessel. Avelyn laughed once, breathless and bitter. That is what you call everything you steal. The frostglass lantern knocked in Morel's grip. Inside it, the black smoke thinned, and a pale handprint pressed against the glass from within. This time, half the court saw. A murmur rippled through the snow. Theron's voice lowered. Open the lantern. Morel's gaze hardened. If I open it, whatever she carries may spread through every wolf in Frostmere. Then hold it toward me. Maestu. Now. The command cracked across the courtyard. Morel obeyed, but slowly. She brought the lantern forward until its black light fell over Theron, Avelyn, and the kneeling wolves. Avelyn lifted the shard. The lantern screamed. Not like metal. Like a woman. The handprint inside struck the glass again. The smoke wrapped itself around the gold thread in Avelyn's shard, trying to pull it back. Pain tore through her chest. The stolen scent was being dragged from her blood a second time. Theron saw her hand shaking. He reached toward the shard, then stopped. Avelyn noticed. Even through pain, she noticed the restraint. You can touch it, she whispered, but not to take. His eyes met hers. I will not. The words should have been too small for a courtyard full of wolves and nobles. They were not. Avelyn opened her fingers. Theron placed his hand beneath hers, supporting the shard without closing around it. The moment his skin touched the frostglass, his wolf shadow slammed fully into shape behind him, vast, black, and trembling, as if it had finally caught a scent it had been born knowing and raised to forget. The lantern cracked. Merele Stegelbeck. Celine's face went pale. From inside the crack came a woman's voice. Not Avelyn's. Not Morel's. Older. The scent was not cursed. It was hidden. The courtyard fell silent. The black smoke in the lantern twisted into an image. A woman in a white wolf mantle standing before an ancient Voss king. Her face was blurred, but her throat bore the same crescent mark, now freezing and burning under Avelyn's skin. The woman in the vision held out her wrist. The king cut it. Her blood fell into a frostglass lantern. Then another voice spoke from the smoke. A man's voice. Royal. Cold. By Voss blood, hide the Luna who ends the winter war. Theron's face changed. Not with shock alone. With recognition of guilt that had been waiting in his blood before he was born. Morel snapped the lantern shut against the crack. The vision vanished. But too late. The court had heard. Avelyn looked at Theron, then at the ice wolves, then at the shard glowing between their hands. The curse was made by your bloodline, she said. No one spoke. Above the courtyard, the black wolf banner stiffened in a wind that did not touch the snow. Theron lifted his gaze to Merele. Who was she? The high frost seeress held the lantern against her chest like a heart she could still protect. No one, Frostmere, can afford to remember. The largest ice wolf stepped beside Avelyn and bared its teeth. From deep inside the lantern, the trapped woman's voice whispered one more line. Then let the girl remember me. The voice inside the lantern did not fade after it spoke. It moved into Avelyn's bones. Then let the girl remember me. The frostglass shard between her hand and Theron's palm flashed gold beneath the black smoke. Pain cut through Avelyn's chest so sharply she nearly dropped it, but Theron's hand stayed beneath hers, steady without closing. The difference mattered. She had been handled all her life by people who called touching her a risk. This was not ownership. This was weight shared for one breath. The lantern in Merel's arms cracked again. A second handprint appeared inside the glass. Then a face, blurred, pale, crowned in white wolf fur. The court gasped and staggered back. Merel lifted her sleeve over the crack. "Look away." Theron's voice cut through the courtyard. No one looks away. The command held. Avelyn raised the shard higher, though black frost crawled up her fingers. "Who are you?" The woman in the lantern pressed her hand to the inside of the glass. The answer did not come as words. It came as scent. For one impossible breath, the palace courtyard vanished. Avelyn stood in a memory of Frostmere before the walls were black, before the gates were iron, before winter had become war. Snow fell softly over a field filled with wolves and people standing together. At the center stood the woman from the lantern, alive then, wrapped in a white mantle, her dark hair braided with bone and moon thread. Ice wolves rested at her feet. A young Voss king stood beside her, not above her. The air smelled of pine smoke, milk, warm fur, iron from honest blood, and hearthstones after childbirth. Home. Not palace. Home. The woman turned in the memory and looked directly at Avelyn. "My name was Elowyn, first Luna of Frostmere. I ended the First Winter War by teaching the ice wolves to know royal blood from hungry blood." The vision shifted. Blood on snow. A battlefield. Ice wolves standing between rival packs, not attacking, but separating them. Elowyn walked among them with both hands open, and every wolf that caught her scent lowered its head. Not because she commanded them, because they trusted the scent that meant shelter, birth, burial, and return. Then the Voss king aged. Fear entered his eyes. The packs listened to Elowyn before they listened to him. The vision darkened. A frostglass lantern appeared. The king's voice spoke again, older and colder. "If the war ends because of her scent, then kings will rule only by permission." Avelyn felt Theron's hand tighten beneath hers. Not on her. Underher. Avelyn knew he was seeing it too. The old Voss king cut Elowyn's wrist and let her blood fall into the lantern. Merel was not there, this had happened too many generations ago, but women in old temple veils surrounded the flame, chanting. Elowyn did not scream. She looked at the king who had once stood beside her and said, "If you bury my scent, winter will keep asking for it." The lantern swallowed her breath. The memory broke. Avelyn was back in the courtyard, knees sunk in snow, shard burning in her hand, Theron kneeling beside her, the ice wolves forming a white wall around them. Every noble had heard. Some looked horrified. Some looked calculating. Selene looked afraid. Not of Elowyn, of recognition. Avelyn turned toward her. The winter lilies. That perfect, clean scent the court praised whenever Selene passed, it was not hers. It carried a thin thread of the same warmth from the vision. Bleached, pale, sweetened, made harmless. A scent cut from motherhood and dressed as noble purity. "You are wearing her," Avelyn said. Selene's face went still. "Theron Rose." "What?" Avelyn's throat ached, but she forced the words out. Her scent, the first Luna's, not all of it, a thin piece, stripped clean, made into lilies. The court recoiled from Selene, as if beauty itself had become a wound. Selene's sorrow vanished. Under it was fury. "You think scent belongs to blood alone?" she said. "Scent is power. A Luna who cannot be loved by the court cannot hold a throne. You stole love and called it purity." Selene's frost pearls flashed in her hair. Merel snapped. "Enough!" She opened the lantern's side panel and poured black smoke into the snow. The death curse on Avelyn's throat surged. The crescent mark disappeared beneath a sheet of black frost. Avelyn choked, and the shard dimmed. The ice wolves howled once, but the lantern drank the sound, pulling it into the flame. Theron reached for Merel. Selene moved first. She crushed every frost pearl from her braid. White dust burst across the courtyard. It struck Avelyn, then the wolves, Then Theron's shadow. The world lost its scent. Avelyn screamed without sound. For the first time in her life, she smelled nothing. Not snow, not blood, not fear, not herself. The absence was more terrifying than death scent. It was a room with no doors inside her own body. The ice wolves stumbled. Theron's wolf shadow blurred again, its shape tearing at the edges. Selene stepped toward him, breathing hard. This is what would happen if her curse enters the palace. Every wolf loses itself. Theron's face tightened in pain, but his eyes stayed on Avelyn. Morel lifted the lantern high. The court has seen enough. By scent law, the cursed woman must be sealed before she empties Frostmere's wolves. A guard reached for Avelyn. The largest ice wolf snapped its jaws inches from his hand. Theron spoke, low and lethal. "Touch her and lose it." The guard froze. The court shook under the threat, but Morel smiled faintly. "Then choose, Majesty, your throne, or the death-scented girl." Avelyn heard the trap. So did Theron. His jaw locked. The shard in Avelyn's hand pulsed weakly. Inside its black smoke, Elowyn's voice returned, almost gone. Not throne, not girl, scent. Avelyn understood. Morel wanted the choice shaped as mercy versus kingdom. But the real choice was whether truth belonged in the open air. Avelyn pushed herself upright. Theron turned toward her. "Do not stand." She did anyway. "I am tired," she whispered, "of being carried into laws made to bury me." The shard brightened. The scentless dust around her began to crack. Avelyn lifted the shard to her throat and pressed it against the black frost. Pain tore through her so violently the wolves lowered themselves, as if the snow had struck them. The frost split. Not wide. Enough. The first Luna's scent burst out once more, but this time it did not drift gently. It struck the lantern. The frostglass screamed. Every stolen handprint inside it appeared at once. And behind them, trapped deeper than all the others, Avelyn saw a woman with her own eyes and her own dark hair. Her mother, alive inside the smoke. The lantern spoke in Morel's voice. "One more breath, and the Rook woman burns. One more breath, and the Rook woman burns." The words came from the lantern in Morel's voice, but the face behind the frostglass was not Morel's. Avelyn stared into the black smoke and saw her mother. Not as she had remembered her fever-thin, quiet, lying under wool blankets, while old women whispered that death scent had finally climbed into her lungs. This woman was older, hollowed by captivity, but alive. Her dark hair floated in the smoke like ink in water. Her eyes were Avelyn's eyes, gray-brown and wounded, and still refusing to close. "Mother," Avelyn breathed. The lantern flame leapt. Her mother's mouth opened in silent pain. Avelyn froze. Morel smiled. "Careful. The lantern is tender with stolen things." Theron moved. Not toward Avelyn. Toward Marilla. The ice wolves shifted with him, low growls rolling beneath the courtyard. His wolf shadow, blurred by Selene's scentless pearl dust, dragged itself into a larger shape along the palace wall. Even wounded, it made the nobles step back. Morel lifted the lantern higher. "Strike me, Majesty, and the glass breaks. If the glass breaks before the scent is separated, every breath inside burns with it." Theron stopped. Avelyn saw the cost of that restraint cut through him. He had the power to crush half the courtyard, but power was useless when the enemy held someone by the breath. Selene stepped beside Morel, pale but composed again. Her braid hung half undone after the frost pearls shattered, and without them, her praised winter lily scent had thinned. Beneath it was something sharp and empty. "She is not your mother anymore," Selene said to Avelyn. "She is fuel. Whatever woman she was ended when the curse took her." Avelyn looked at her. "Is that what Morel told you about the first Luna too?" Selene's mouth tightened. The lantern knocked once in Morel's grip. Avelyn's mother pressed one hand against the glass from inside. This time, the gesture did not look like pleading. It looked like warning. Avelyn forced herself to lower the shard from her throat. The first Luna's scent retreated beneath the black frost, and the pain eased enough for her to think. If she released more scent, the lantern punished her mother. If she surrendered the shard, Morel would seal the stolen scent again. If Theron broke the law too early, the court would call him ruined by a cursed woman. Every path had been shaped to make her desperate. so she stopped moving. Mirelle noticed. Wise girl. No, Avelyn whispered. Tired girl. Then she turned her face toward the ice wolves. The largest one stood closest, blood from Avelyn's feet drying in pale streaks across its fur. Its eyes fixed on the lantern, not with hunger but grief. It recognized her mother, too. Or perhaps it recognized the shape of a scent held too long in pain. What did she carry? Avelyn asked. Mirelle's eyes narrowed. What? My mother. You did not keep her alive out of mercy. You needed something from her. The courtyard went silent. Theron looked from Avelyn to the lantern. Avelyn did not wait for Mirelle's answer. She looked at the frostglass shard in her own hand. Black smoke around gold light, her stolen scent. But the lantern held more than scent. It held breaths, handprints. Women. A line of buried mothers. My mother was not the source, Avelyn said slowly. She was the lock. The lantern flame flickered. Truth had touched it. Mirelle's fingers tightened. Avelyn lifted her eyes. You used her breath to keep my true scent from escaping. Celine glanced at Mirelle. Too quickly. Theron saw it. So the curse on Avelyn is being maintained now, he said. Mirelle's face hardened. All old protections require tending. Protection, Avelyn repeated. The word tasted like blood. Inside the lantern, her mother shook her head once, weakly. Avelyn understood. Not protection. Feeding. The death scent was not a curse left in the past. It was being renewed each time Mirelle fed the lantern with pearl dust, hair, blood, or fear. Avelyn had not been slowly dying from old magic. She had been kept under a fresh lie. Theron's voice lowered. How do we remove it? Mirelle laughed softly. You cannot. The death scent is woven through her blood. Cut it away, and she becomes what the ice wolves think she is. And what is that? He asked. Mirelle did not answer. The largest ice wolf did. It stepped forward and pressed its nose to the shard in Avelyn's hand. Frost spread over the glass, not black this time, but blue-white. Inside the shard, the gold thread uncurled into a tiny crescent. The same crescent on Avelyn's throat. The same mark from the first Luna's memory. The ice wolf exhaled. A scent rose, not from Avelyn, not from the lantern, but from the snow beneath them. Buried pine roots. Milk-warm fur. Bloodline. The courtyard stones shuddered. Under the snow, something answered. Avelyn looked down. A faint ring of gold light appeared beneath her bare feet, hidden under ice and courtyard stone. It was not a spell circle. It was older, rougher, made from paw marks and women's footprints pressed into frozen earth. Theron knelt and brushed snow aside with his burned hand. The ring brightened. At its edge, old words surfaced in frost. The first Luna does not return through scent alone. Avelyn read the next line before Mirelle kicked snow over it. But too late. She had seen it. She must be recognized by the wolves and refused by the throne. Avelyn's chest tightened. Refused by the throne. Not abandoned to death. Refused in truth. Theron had to deny her before the old law could open. Mirelle saw her understanding and smiled for the first time without hiding the cruelty inside it. Now you understand why kings are useful. Theron stood slowly. What does that mean? It means your bloodline made the hiding, Majesty. Only your bloodline can complete it or break it. The lantern flame turned red. Avelyn's mother screamed silently behind the glass. Celine stepped toward Theron, voice urgent and smooth. There is still time. Refuse her publicly. Name her death, sent it again. The court will accept it, the northern packs will accept it, and the lantern will calm. Avelyn looked at Theron. She hated that part of her feared he would do it. Not because he was cruel, because kings survived by choosing what kingdoms could bear. Theron's jaw locked. His wolf shadow trembled behind him, torn between the scent it wanted to follow and the bloodline law wrapped around his throne. Mirelle raised the lantern toward him. Say the words, Majesty. The court watched. The ice wolves watched. Avelyn's mother burned behind glass. Theron looked at Avelyn with fury, regret, and something he had no right to give yet. Then he turned to the court. Avelyn Rook, he said, voice carrying through the snow, will not sleep beneath my roof tonight. The words struck her like a blade. The ring under her feet blazed open. The ice wolves howled. And from inside the frostglass lantern, her mother's voice finally broke free. Good, Now the old door can open. The courtyard split beneath Avelyn's feet. Not violently, precisely. Snow cracked in a perfect crescent around her, and the hidden ring of paw marks and women's footprints burned gold beneath the ice. The frostglass lantern screamed in Mayrell's hands. Black smoke slammed against its walls, and the woman inside Avelyn's mother pressed both palms to the glass as her voice escaped for the first time in years. Good, now the old door can open. The court recoiled from Avelyn, as if she had become a wound in the ground. Theron stood several paces away, his face carved with the cost of the words he had just spoken. Avelyn Rook will not sleep beneath my roof tonight. Every noble had heard rejection. Avelyn had felt it like rejection, too. But the old ring beneath her feet had answered differently. It did not burn with shame. It opened with recognition. Mayrell understood before the court did. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with sudden fury. No! The largest ice wolf stepped onto the glowing ring beside Avelyn. Its paw sank through the snow without breaking it, as if the ground had become water only for those the old pact accepted. Selene moved close to Theron, voice soft but urgent. Majesty, the law has heard you. She is refused. Let the wolves take her. Do not follow. Theron did not look at her. I did not condemn her. You said she would not sleep beneath your roof. His golden eyes cut to Mayrell. Because my roof has been used as a cage. The words struck the courtyard harder than the cracking ice. Avelyn looked at him then. Not with forgiveness. Not yet. But with something less broken than fear. Mayrell lifted the lantern high. The throne has refused her. The old law is satisfied. Seal the door. The lantern flame turned red. The black frost on Avelyn's throat tightened, dragging a cry from her. The gold ring flickered. Her mother's face blurred behind the glass, burning at the edges. Avelyn clutched the stolen scent shard to her chest. The old door beneath her. Theron stepped forward. The ring flashed warning. His iron circlet darkened at his brow. The old words under the snow changed. No throne crosses where the first Luna was buried. Theron stopped. The court saw him stop and thought him trapped by sacred law. Avelyn saw his hand rise toward the iron circlet. Mayrell saw it too. Majesty, she said sharply, if you remove the crown ring before the court, the Northern Alphas will call your authority broken. Theron's jaw tightened. Selene whispered, do not throw away a kingdom for a woman who still carries death. Avelyn felt the sentence try to enter her like cold water. A woman who still carries death. That was the shape they always forced her into. Even when wolves bowed, even when the lantern screamed, even when her mother's face appeared inside stolen smoke. The court could survive any miracle if someone named it danger fast enough. Avelyn lifted her chin. No. The gold ring steadied. Every eye turned to her. She looked at Theron, though speaking to the court cost her more than the cold. Do not remove it because of me. His face changed. She turned toward Mayrell. And do not seal the door because of him. The ice wolves lowered their heads. Avelyn's voice shook, but it held. You all keep making my life depend on whether a king reaches for me. I was not buried under his roof. I was buried under your law. The stolen scent shard brightened. The black frost at her throat cracked again. Theron's wolf shadow pressed forward, huge and trembling, but he did not cross the ring. He listened. Avelyn faced the old door beneath her feet. If the first Luna left a path, I will walk it because it belongs to the women you burned into glass, not because the throne permits me. The ring opened fully. Snow and stone folded downward, revealing a stair made of clear ice, lit from within by gold fire. Warm air rose from below, impossible in the frozen courtyard. It smelled of pine smoke, milk, moonlit fur, and blood remembered without shame. The ice wolves began descending. Avelyn followed, barefoot, one hand on the largest wolf's shoulder. Theron took one step after her. The ring flashed again. No throne. He stopped. For a breath, the distance between them felt larger than the winter war. Then Theron reached up and removed the iron circlet from his brow. The court erupted. Mayrell cried. Majesty, do not. He placed the circlet in the snow outside the ring. I am not bringing a throne, he said. His gaze found Avelyn's. I am bringing the man whose bloodline made the wound. The old ring did not reject him. It waited. Avelyn did not invite him. That mattered too. She looked down the glowing stair, then back at him. If you come, you answer as Voss blood, not as king. Theron bowed his head once. Then I answer. He stepped into the ring. The gold fire rose around him, testing his shadow. His wolf shadow passed through first, shuddering as the old scent touched it. The blurred edges sharpened for a single breath, then bent low toward Avelyn, not claiming her, only recognizing the path she had opened. Jelina's face twisted. She snatched the last frost pearl hidden at her throat and crushed it. White dust flew toward the ring. Before it could touch Avelyn, the ice wolves lunged together and blew frost back at her. The pearl dust struck Celine instead. Her winter lily scent vanished. Under it, the court smelled nothing. No lilies, no clean snow, no noble blood, only stolen sweetness gone empty. Whispers cut through the courtyard. Celine stepped back, horrified. Mirelle's hand snapped toward her. Fool. The lantern cracked wider. Avelyn's mother screamed as red flame licked the inside of the glass. Avelyn turned down the stair. No more waiting. The old door pulled her below. Theron followed. The ice closed over them, shutting out the court's panic, Mirelle's command, and Celine's exposed emptiness. At the bottom of the stair waited a chamber that was not a tomb. It was a hearth. A circular hall of gold-lit ice stretched beneath Frostmere, its walls filled with frostglass lanterns holding women's handprints. In the center burned a low blue flame, and above it hovered the silver wolf mask from the hidden forest hollow. This time, the mask was not alone. Behind it stood the pale shape of Elowyn, first Luna of Frostmere, with Avelyn's mother chained in smoke beside her. Elowyn looked at Avelyn, then at Theron. The throne refused her, the first Luna said. Now, the blood that made the curse must decide what it will lose to break it. The hearth beneath Frostmere did not burn like fire. It breathed. Blue flame lay low in the center of the gold-lit ice chamber, moving in and out like the chest of a sleeping wolf. Around it, frostglass lanterns hung in rings from the ceiling, each one holding a woman's handprint inside the glass. Some were clear, some were blackened, some shook softly, as if the breath trapped within had heard footsteps and hoped too quickly. Avelyn stood before them, with the stolen scent shard pressed to her chest. For the first time, the cold did not hurt her. That frightened her more than pain. Theron stood beside her without his iron circlet, his black hair wet with melted frost, his wolf shadow sharp but uneasy behind him. Down here, he looked less like a king, not smaller, more exposed. The chamber did not care for crowns, and without one, every wound in his bloodline seemed to stand beside him. Elowyn, first Luna of Frostmere, hovered beyond the blue flame. Her white wolf mantle moved though no wind touched it. Beside her, Avelyn's mother hung in black smoke, chains of frostglass wrapped around her wrists and throat, her face thin with years of stolen breath. Avelyn took one step toward her. The lanterns rang. Not with bells, with warning. Elowyn lifted one hand. If you touch her before the curse is named, the lantern will take your breath too. Avelyn stopped so hard her bare feet slid on the ice. Her mother's eyes filled with silent apology. Theron looked at Elowyn. Name it. The first Luna's gaze turned to him. Your bloodline already did. The blue flame rose. A memory opened inside it. An ancient Voss king stood in this chamber with Elowyn bound before the hearth. He was not the old man from the first vision yet. He was younger, handsome, afraid in a way power often mistook for wisdom. Around him knelt temple women, frost seeresses before Mirelle's name existed, each holding frost glass bowls filled with scent. Elowyn stood unbowed. If you hide what I am, she said, the ice wolves will no longer know where to bring the wounded. The king's mouth tightened. The wolves brought them to you before they brought them to me. They brought them to the scent that meant safety. They brought them away from the throne. His fear spread through the chamber like black frost. Avelyn felt Theron go still beside her. The ancient king lifted his bloodied palm above the hearth. By Voss blood, no Luna shall be known unless the throne permits her scent. The blue flame turned red. Elowyn's breath tore from her body as gold smoke. The lanterns drank it. Then the old king cut the palms of women from her bloodline, one by one, forcing their warm scent through death ash until it soured into grave frost. Avelyn pressed a hand to her mouth. The curse had not been made to kill. It was a disguise. A scent mask forced over generations of women, so the wolves would not find them before kings could decide whether they were useful. The memory shifted. A woman with Avelyn's eyes ran through snow with an infant hidden beneath her cloak. A temple blade struck her from behind. Before she fell, she pressed one last golden breath into the child's throat. Avelyn knew without being told. Her ancestor, the first Rook woman to carry what remained. Ilowen's voice filled the chamber. Your line carried the scent because my own daughters were hunted too openly. Rook blood became the winter pocket where my breath survived. Avelyn looked at the black frost on her throat. And every generation was called death, scented. Yes, her mother's chained shadow bowed her head. Avelyn swallowed grief until it became something sharper. Theron faced the memory, jaw clenched. What must my blood lose? The chamber quieted. Ilowen looked at his bare brow, where the iron circlet had left a pale mark, the right your ancestors stole. Theron did not ask which right. He knew. Avelyn saw it in the way his wolf shadow lowered its head. For centuries, Voss kings had ruled scent law. They decided which woman's scent was clean, which was cursed, which was Luna-worthy, which was grave-marked. Every noble house built marriages around that law. Every northern pack accepted it because scent was older than documents, older than banners, older than crown metal. If Theron broke that right, he would not merely defend Avelyn. He would weaken the language his throne used to rule. Morel had built her power on it. Selene had built her future on it. Theron's ancestors had built a winter kingdom around it. Avelyn stepped between him and the hearth. No. Theron's eyes cut to hers. She hated that they were beginning to understand each other too quickly, in moments meant to destroy them. I will not have another law break because a man bleeds grandly in front of me, she said. That is still making my life depend on a king's sacrifice. The blue flame brightened. Ilowen's mouth curved. Not into a smile. Into recognition. Theron's voice lowered. Then what do you ask of me? Avelyn looked at the lanterns full of women's hands. Do not sacrifice for me. Renounce for them. The words settled into the ice. Theron's expression changed. The difference was small. It was everything. He drew the dagger from his belt and cut his palm, not dramatically, not across the heart, not as a lover promising fate, just enough blood to answer blood. He let it fall into the hearth. The flame turned black, then gold. Theron spoke, each word rough but clear. By Voss blood, I renounce the throne's right to name a Luna by stolen scent, sealed scent, altered scent, or priest-made scent. No woman's breath belongs to my crown. The chamber shook. Above them, through layers of ice and stone, the palace howled. Not wolves, noblesse. Avelyn felt the old law crack somewhere high in the world. The black frost on her throat split open. Gold scent poured out. The lanterns swung wildly. Handprints flared. One by one, the trapped women inhaled for the first time in years. Avelyn's mother screamed. This time aloud. Her chains cracked. Avelyn ran to her, but stopped just short of touching, remembering the warning. The scent shard in her hand melted into liquid gold and rose into the air, joining the flame. Ilowen lifted both hands. The right is renounced, she said. Now the stolen breath must choose where to return. Avelyn's mother looked at her through breaking smoke. Not all to me. Avelyn froze. What? Her mother's voice trembled. If all returns to me, I live, and you remain masked. If all returns to you, I fade, and you wake whole. The gold flame split into two streams. One curled toward Avelyn's throat, the other toward her mother's chest. Avelyn stepped back as if struck. Theron moved, then stopped himself. Good. This choice was not his. From above came a distant crash. The ice ceiling darkened. Morel's voice poured down through the cracks, furious and bright with old magic. Then I choose for both. Red frost speared through the chamber and struck the lanterns. Several shattered. Women's handprints burst into smoke. Avelyn's mother cried out as her chains tightened again. Theron's wolf shadow lunged upward, but the old chamber held him back. Ilowen turned toward the ceiling with grief hardening into wrath. She has opened the war scent. The blue hearth flame darkened at the edges. Avelyn smelled it then. Not death. Not home. Battle. Blood on snow. Burned fur. Hungry kings. Above Frostmere, the winter war was waking. Morel had not only hidden the first Luna's scent. She had been keeping the war alive by starving the wolves of the one scent that could end it. Avelyn looked from her mother to the gold flame, then to the red frost breaking into the chamber. The stolen breath waited. Her mother waited. The war scent grew stronger. Avelyn closed her hand around empty air where the shard had been. I will not choose between my mother and myself while she burns the kingdom above us. The gold streams paused. The ice wolves howled from the stair. Avelyn turned toward the hearth. Show me where the war scent is fed. The blue flame sank into the floor. A dark path opened under the ice, leading deeper than the first Luna's chamber, toward a sound like thousands of wolves running beneath frozen earth. Elovin's face went pale. No living Luna was meant to go there. Avelyn looked at Theron, not asking him to save her, asking whether he understood the cost of following. Theron took one step to her side. Then neither was a crownless Voss. Below them, the path widened, and from the dark beneath Frostmere came the first howl of the winter war. The path beneath the hearth did not lead to another chamber. It led to a battlefield. Avelyn stepped out onto frozen earth under Frostmere and felt the world widen into darkness. Above her, the palace was stone, law, court, and throne. Down here, it was only snow hardened over old blood. Spears jutted from the ice like dead trees. Broken shields lay half-buried beneath frost. Wolf bones formed pale ridges across the ground, all facing the same direction, as if they had died running toward a call that never stopped. The winter war had not ended. It had been kept beneath the kingdom. Theron came beside her, crownless, silent, his wolf shadow stretched long behind him. The ice wolves descended around them, but even they walked carefully here. Their paws made no sound on the ancient battlefield. At the center stood a black lantern, taller than a man. Not frostglass, bone glass. Its frame was made of rib bones, antlers, and old crown metal. Inside, it churned a red scent fire, thick and violent, smelling of blood on snow, burning fur, fear between rival packs, and the terrible sweetness of hatred kept warm for generations. Avelyn covered her mouth. Theron's hand moved toward her, then stopped before touching. Is this what she is feeding? Avelyn forced herself to breathe through the horror. No, this is what feeds her. The red fire turned. It had no face, yet it looked at her. From within it came thousands of wolf snarls layered together until they became one endless hunger. The largest ice wolf lowered its head. Avelyn felt the stolen breath still waiting somewhere above them, split between her mother and herself. It pulled at her throat, demanding she return to the hearth, demanding she choose before it was too late. But now she understood Merel's real trap. Avelyn's mother had been kept as the lock. Avelyn had been made into the mask. The first Luna's scent had been burned into false purity for Selene and false death for Avelyn. But the winter war itself had been kept alive by hunger. Every time the kingdom forgot home, this thing grew stronger. A sound cracked through the battlefield. Applause. Merel stood on a ridge of ice beyond the bone-glass lantern, her white robe stained red by war scent, the frostglass lantern in one hand. Avelyn's mother hung inside it, dimmer now, her outline fraying at the edges. Selene stood beside the seeress, stripped of her winter lily scent, face pale, with a fury that had lost its perfume. You found the root, Merel said. Most women die at the mask. Theron's wolf shadow rose. Release her mother. Merel looked at him almost kindly, still thinking like a king. One hostage, one command, one victory. Her gaze moved to Avelyn. She understands better. Everything here survives because no one is allowed to be only one thing. Avelyn held her stare. You made me death. I made you useful. The words struck like a familiar slap. Selene's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Merel lifted the frostglass lantern. Your mother kept your scent sealed. Her breath fed the death mask. Your true scent fed Selene's acceptance. The first Luna's stolen breath held the ice wolves away from the war route, a beautiful structure. A prison, Avelyn said. A kingdom, Merel corrected. Without war, the northern packs would remember they once followed the first Luna's scent before they followed Voss blood. Without fear, they would ask why kings decide which women are safe to love. Theron's voice was low. You kept my borders bleeding to protect a throne from a dead woman's memory. Merel smiled faintly. No, Majesty. To protect it from a living woman's return. The red fire inside the bone-glass lantern surged. All across the buried battlefield, wolf bones began to rise. Not whole wolves, not ghosts, remains forced into motion by scent. Rib cages dragged themselves out of ice. Skulls turned toward Avelyn. The war root had smelled what Morel feared. Home, and it hated it. Theron drew his sword. Avelyn caught his wrist. This time she did touch him. His eyes cut to hers. "If you fight it," she said, "you feed it." His grip tightened around the sword hilt. Then slowly, painfully, he lowered the blade. Morel's expression sharpened. She had expected rage, a Voss answer, steel against hunger, blood against old blood, another war inside the war. Avelyn stepped toward the bone-glass lantern. The dead wolves turned with her. The largest ice wolf moved to block her, but she placed a hand against its frozen fur. "No, they are not attacking yet. They are waiting to be named." The wolf trembled. Theron stayed beside her, sword lowered. His restraint shook through his whole body, but he held it. Avelyn faced the rising bones. "You were not born for this," she said. The battlefield stilled. Morel laughed. "You think comfort unravels war?" "No." Avelyn looked at the red fire. "Truth does." She drew one breath and opened herself to every scent she had been taught to fear. Grave frost, blood, burned fur, milk, pine smoke, palace perfume, her mother's breath, Elowyn's hearth, Theron's iron restraint, Celine's emptiness, Morelli's fear disguised as law. For the first time, she did not reject the death scent. She followed it. Under the grave, frost was not death. It was burial. Under burial was not curse. It was hiding. Under hiding was a scent so small and wounded she nearly missed it. Children. Avelyn opened her eyes. The wolf bones across the battlefield were not only warriors. Small skulls lay among them. Small paws, tiny ribs. The First Winter War had not only taken soldiers, it had taken dens. Mothers. Newborns. The war root was not fed by hatred alone. It was fed by every pack child who never found its way home. Avelyn's voice broke. "That is what you buried." Theron went still. Even Meryl's smile faded. Avelyn turned on her. "You did not keep the war alive with enemy blood. You kept it alive with lost children." Celine whispered. "No." Mayrell's gaze cut to her. "Do not be sentimental now." But Celine was staring at the small bones. Without stolen lilies, without pearls, without the scent that had made the court love her, she looked young and frightened and almost empty enough to be honest. "My brother died in the North Dens," she said. "You told me rival packs took him." "They did," Myrell snapped, "after the war root called them." Celine stepped back from her. The bone-glass lantern roared. Morel lifted the frostglass lantern and drove her fingers through its crack. Avelyn's mother screamed as the seeress pulled a ribbon of gold breath from her chest. "Enough. If she will not choose, I will." The gold breath split in Morel's hand, one stream toward Celine, to restore the false Luna scent, one toward the war root, to turn home into hunger forever. Avelyn ran. The dead bones lunged. Theron moved with her, not ahead, not behind. Beside her, as he had promised without saying it. His wolf shadow struck the ground, forming a black wall against the rising bones, not killing them, only holding them back. Avelyn reached the bone-glass lantern and pressed both palms to it. The red fire burned through her skin. Morel screamed, "It will take you." Avelyn answered through clenched teeth. "Then it will have to learn my name first." The first Luna's silver mask appeared in the red flame. Elowyn's voice filled the battlefield. "Name what war stole." Avelyn looked at the small bones. "Not soldiers. Not enemies. Not useful dead. Children," she whispered. The red fire faltered. Theron stepped beside her and placed his burned hand on the bone glass. "Dens," he said. The fire cracked. Celine, shaking, stepped forward. "My brother," she said. The gold breath in Mayrell's hand snapped free. The battlefield erupted in blue-white light. Every small bone dissolved into scent-warm fur, milk breath, snow dens, mother's grief, father's howls rising not as death, but as home interrupted. The war root screamed. Above them, through stone and ice, Frostmere's horns began to sound in panic. Mayrel staggered back, suddenly terrified. No, if they remember the children, the packs will stop hating each other. Avelyn lifted her burned hands from the lantern, then let them. The bone glass split from top to bottom. Inside the crack, Avelyn saw the final seal, a living red thread tied from the war root to Mayrel's own heart. The seeress had not merely preserved the war, she had bound herself to it, and if the war died, so would every lie she had become. The red thread pulsed from the war root into Mayrel's heart. For the first time, the High Frost seeress looked less like a priestess and more like what she had always been beneath the white robes, a woman terrified that peace would make her unnecessary. Avelyn saw it clearly now. Mayrel had not served winter. She had fed it. Every hidden child, every nameless den, every mother told her grief belonged to the enemy, every girl whose warm scent was turned into grave frost, every noble bride painted with stolen sweetness. All of it had kept the red thread alive. Theron stood beside Avelyn, with his burned hand still pressed to the cracked bone-glass lantern. His wolf shadow held back the restless bones around them, not by tearing them apart, but by standing between them and the old hunger calling them back to war. Mayrel clutched the red thread at her chest. "Do not look at me like that. I held the North together." Avelyn's hands bled against the bone glass. "No, you held its wound open." The war root screamed. Above them, Frostmere's horns kept sounding, distant and frantic. Through the ice ceiling, faint tremors rolled down, court doors opening, guards shouting, wolves howling from the palace walls. The old law was breaking upward. Mayrel lifted the frostglass lantern with Avelyn's mother inside it. If this dies, the northern packs will remember every child lost, every den burned, every treaty broken. They will not forgive. Theron's voice was low. They were never given the truth to forgive. Mayrel's mouth twisted. Truth does not end war. Avelyn looked at the blue-white scents rising from the small bones. Milk breath, warm fur, mother's arms, father's howls, dens buried under snow. Her heart cracked. "No," she said, "but morning can." The first Luna's silver mask burned inside the broken bone glass. Elowyn's voice moved through the battlefield. "Then give the dead what war denied." Avelyn understood. Not vengeance. Not victory. Return. She pressed both bleeding palms harder to the bone glass and opened her throat to every scent she had been taught to fear. The death scent came first, bitter and black. She did not push it away. She followed it down to the place beneath the lie. "Children of the North," she whispered, "you were not weapons." The red fire weakened. Theron placed his other hand beside hers. "You were not proof." Celine stepped forward slowly, shaking so hard the pearls remaining in her torn braid clicked like little bones. She looked at the rising scent of children and saw one face no perfume could hide from her anymore. "My brother was not taken by enemies," she said. "He was fed to the story." The battlefield stilled. The words cost her. That made them true. Avelyn turned toward the circling bones. "Come home clean." The blue-white scents rose at once. They did not enter Avelyn. They did not enter Theron. They moved upward through ice, stone, palace, and storm, toward the living packs above. Somewhere in Frostmere, mothers woke weeping without knowing why. Old warriors dropped to their knees. Rival wolves beyond the border lifted their heads as the scent of lost children crossed the winter air and named grief that had been sharpened into hatred for generations. The war root convulsed. The red thread in Mayrel's chest went black. She screamed and fell to her knees. The frostglass lantern tumbled from her hand, but Avelyn caught it before it struck the ice. Her mother's face flickered inside, dim and torn by years of feeding the curse. The gold breath returned from the battlefield and circled the lantern, waiting again between mother and daughter. Avelyn's mother opened her eyes. "Not all to me," she whispered. Avelyn's throat tightened. "I will not let you die for me, and I will not let you stay half-buried for me." Theron stepped back. So did his wolf shadow. This choice did not belong to Voss blood. Avelyn looked at the First Luna's mask. "Is there another way?" Elowyn's pale form appeared behind the flame, less distant now. "There is always another way when a woman refuses the choice made for her." The gold breath split again. This time, Avelyn did not choose either stream. She lifted the lantern toward the hanging frostglass lights above the battlefield. Return first to every woman you were stolen from. The gold breath burst outward. It rushed through the lanterns beneath Frostmere, through the forest hollow, through the palace vessel in Morel's hands, through hidden chambers and sealed relics. Handprints flared open. Women's scents returned to names, bodies, graves, daughters, old blankets, empty cradles, and living throats. Only after the stolen breath had returned to its line did what remained divide. One stream entered Avelyn's mother. The other entered Avelyn. The black frost around Avelyn's throat shattered. She gasped as warmth flooded her skin. Not sweetness made for court praise, not perfume, not false purity. Her true scent returned whole. Pine smoke after snowfall, milk-warm fur, moonlight on sleeping wolves, bloodline, shelter, home. The ice wolves bowed their heads. Theron's wolf shadow bowed too, but Theron did not kneel. He only stood very still, as if afraid any movement might turn recognition into claim. Avelyn's mother stepped from the broken lantern as smoke became flesh enough to hold shape, not fully alive as before, not dead. Something between breath and memory, warmed by what had been returned. Avelyn reached for her. This time, no law stopped her. Mother and daughter held each other in the blue-white glow while the war root behind them collapsed into ash. Morel crawled backward, one hand clutched to the dead red thread at her chest. You do not understand what you have done. Avelyn looked at her over her mother's shoulder. I ended what you kept hungry. The fallen bone-glass lantern closed around Morel's shadow, not killing her, recording her. Elowyn lifted one hand, and the broken lanterns turned toward the seeress. Every stolen scent she had managed, twisted, burned, or renamed, passed through her at once. Morel screamed as the old moon temple stripped her of sacred office, leaving her bound to the hollow beneath Frostmere until each stolen woman's name was restored above ground. Selene sank to her knees. Without false lilies, she looked younger and colder, but not innocent. Theron faced her. You will stand before every house that praised the scent you wore, and tell them whose breath it was. Selene bowed her head. Yes, Majesty. No, Avelyn said quietly. Theron looked at her. Avelyn's voice held. Not Majesty, not here. A silence passed. Then Theron corrected himself. Yes, he said to Selene, before the women whose breath was taken. Elowyn's silver mask dimmed. The battlefield below Frostmere began to thaw. By the time Avelyn and Theron returned through the ice stair, dawn had turned the snowfield gold. The winter court waited in chaos, but no one spoke when the ice wolves emerged first. Then Avelyn, barefoot and bare-throated, her mother walking like pale smoke at her side. Theron followed without his circlet. His wolf shadow came behind him, sharp and whole. The nobles smelled Avelyn's true scent and lowered their eyes before they could decide whether pride allowed it. Theron walked to the throne but did not sit. By Voss blood, he said, scent law is broken. No throne will name a woman cursed by what it stole from her. Morel's followers dropped their heads. The rival envoys in the court stood stunned. Then, far beyond the walls, the first northern wolf pack howled. Not challenge. Answer. Theron turned to Avelyn in front of them all. Frostmere owes you record, shelter, and truth. I owe you more than a crown can offer. Avelyn met his eyes. Do not offer me a crown because your wolf remembers my scent. His mouth tightened, not in anger. In respect. Then I will offer nothing that asks you to become smaller. She looked at the ice wolves, at her mother, at the court that had sent her out to die, and now did not know how to survive her return. I will stay until every lantern is opened, she said, until every stolen scent has a name, until the war children are mourned by both sides. Theron bowed his head once. Then Frostmere begins there. The largest ice wolf stepped between them and lowered itself at Avelyn's feet. Not as a beast before its master. As a guardian before the woman it had carried home. Only then did Theron kneel in the snow. Not to claim her. To meet the level of the wolf that had known the truth before the throne did. Avelyn placed one hand in the great wolf's fur and the other, after a long breath, in Theron's open palm. The court watched. This time, no lantern swallowed the scent that rose between them. The death-scented girl had gone into the snow as a curse. She returned with the wolves, the first Luna's breath, and a winter kingdom forced to remember what home smelled like before war taught it to hate.